Well, hello everyone. We're just starting this new series today on mindfully facing disease and death. And the plan is that we'll be looking at the suttas that Bhante Anālayo identified in his book by that title that are in the Pali Canon. So in the book, you don't necessarily need the book for this next 12 weeks, but if you happen to have it or uh, want to use it, that would, I think, would be beneficial. But even if that's not available, that's fine because we're going to be talking about the suttas themselves that are in the Pali Canon that, as I said, that Bhante Anālayo references in the book. In the book, he's translated mostly from the Chinese agamas, the parallels of the Pali version. And so it's interesting to really kind of evaluate or contemplate, I guess, is more the right way to think about it. The differences or um, the suttas and how the Buddha presents this in slightly different ways. Wow, there's a lot of sun back there. I think was uh, I think it'll change. Like everything. That's part of the lesson, I think, for all of us. So let's start with
What it
some
looked like there, but coming, the image on the screen is of all this rainbow colors kind of surrounding you like an aura, of course. You're doing
yeah,
some powerful meditation there.
It is pretty bright though on our
it is
side.
pretty bright. It is pretty bright.
It
Um,
looks like stars, like a star system or something behind you.
I know it's like, yeah. So I'm thinking that every meeting will just start with about 20 minutes of meditation, and then we'll discuss the sutta. So instead of the light and the swirls and the stars and whatever, just ask you to close your eyes and become still. So settling into the body. Noticing your breathing. Setting aside everything else. Relaxing and feeling body. Inviting the body to become calm and relaxed. And also inviting the mind to become calm and relaxed. Noticing any pleasant feeling in the body. As we breathe in and breathe out. Bring up an attitude of kindness towards the body, whatever it's feeling, whatever its state of health. Appreciating all that we can do, having a body. Being compassionate for the ways in which the body aches, suffers in various ways. Feeling that kindness and compassion for this body that we've had now for some years. Maybe many years. And just notice what the effect is on the mind when we hear the words kindness and compassion. What it feels like, what it's like right now. To think about having kindness and compassion towards your own body. Just relaxing and feeling. Now we'll bring the meditation to a close and just gradually come back. So as we reflect on disease and death and our relationship to it, and those of you who are reading along with the book, you'll notice, you've probably already seen that the first chapter, Bhante Anālayo talks about the Buddha as a physician, as a doctor, and that the disease that we have is dukkha. And the cure for that disease is to follow the Noble Eightfold Path. And so understanding what that disease is and how it works leads us to seeing that we all cling to things that are constantly changing, and that when we let go, we have relief from dukkha. And when we understand completely and we don't grasp onto things anymore, then we are cured of the disease, and it won't come back. So that's one way of thinking of liberation, enlightenment. So as we go through, I'm not I don't know if everyone has seen the page on our website about the sequence where it talks about, identifies which sutras we're going to look at during the 12 weeks, but it's there on the KBV website under teachings, and it's the winter retreat teachings. And we're not going to look at suttas in the first chapter. We're not going to be looking at suttas in all the chapters. There are 24 chapters and we only have 12 weeks. So we'll take one or two a week. And today's sutta is from the Samyutta Nikaya, and Bhante Anālayo references it in the second chapter. It's about Nakulapita, who is, Pita means father, so Nakula's father. And Nakulapita shows up frequently in the suttas, and so does Nakulamata. Mata is mother. So them as a couple. The commentary says that they were the Buddha's parents in previous lifetimes. So I don't know if that's really the case or not, but they're certainly an outstanding couple. And this sutta comes from a time when Nakulapita is very advanced in age. The commentary says he's 120. I'm not sure if that's true either, but pretty old at this point. So I'm going to share the screen. First. Get to the right place. Okay. And feel free to ask any questions that you have about what's said in the book or about what we're talking about as we go. So Nakula's father. So I've heard at one time the Buddha was staying in the land of the Bhagas at Crocodile's Bellow in the deer park at Basicala's Wood. We're looking at Bhante Sujato's version of this. There's also a translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi available on Sutta Central for this sutta, so you know. Then the householder, Nakula's father, went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to the Buddha, Sir, I'm an old man, elderly and senior. I'm advanced in years and have reached the final stage of life. My body is ailing and I'm constantly unwell. I hardly ever get to see the esteemed mendicants. May the Buddha please advise me and instruct me. It will be for my lasting welfare and happiness. And the Buddha says, that's true, so true, householder, that's so true. For this body is ailing, swaddled in its shell. You know, that's an unusual translation, and Bhante Sajato has a footnote here where he says that this idiom is also found in the Anguttara Nikaya, 811. And it's kind of an interesting image, swaddled in its shell. And he says, in this population lost in ignorance, swaddled in their shells, I alone have broken open the egg of ignorance and realized the supreme perfect awakening. So that was what the Buddha says in that reference. So just thinking about the body, thinking about sort of being swaddled in this shell of the body. If anyone dragging around this body claimed to be healthy, even for an hour, what is that but foolishness? So you should train like this. Though my body is ailing, my mind will be healthy. That's how you should train. So many of you, during the New Year's at KBV, we draw these papers of the Buddha's words about this is how you should train, and take that on for a year. So here's another one. We'll train that though the body is ailing, the mind will be healthy. And when the householder Nakulapita approved, and then the householder Nakulapita approved and agreed with what the Buddha said, and he got up from his seat and he bowed and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right. And then he went up to Venerable Sariputta. He bowed and sat down to one side, and Sariputta said to him, Householder, your faculties are so very clear, and your complexion is pure and bright. Did you get to hear a Dhamma talk in the Buddha's presence today? Have you ever noticed sometimes when people meditate or they've heard some Dhamma talk, maybe they're glowing. So even at whatever age he was really glowing from having listened to the Buddha and been with the Buddha. Nakulapita says, what else, sir, could it be? Just now the Buddha anointed me with the deathless ambrosia of a Dhamma talk. And Venerable Sariputta says, but what kind of ambrosial Dhamma talk did the Buddha anoint you? With what kind did he anoint you? Then Nakulapita told Venerable Sariputta all that had happened and said, that's the ambrosial Dhamma talk with which I was anointed by the Buddha. So he explained it. And then Sariputta said, but didn't you feel the need to ask the Buddha the further question of how do you define someone ailing in body and ailing in mind? And someone ailing in body and healthy in mind? And Nakulapita says, we would travel a long way to learn the meaning of this statement in the presence of Venerable Sariputta. May Venerable Sariputta himself please clarify the meaning of this. Well then, householder, listen and apply your mind well, and I'll speak. Yes, sir, replied Nakula's father, Nakulapita. Sariputta said this. And how is one ailing in body and ailing in mind? It's when an unlearned, ordinary person has not seen the noble ones and is neither skilled nor trained in the qualities of a noble one. They've not seen true persons and are neither skilled nor trained in the qualities of a true person. So this is a common description in the suttas, and early on I found it kind of confusing. But it is really about someone who hasn't heard the teachings of the Dhamma, one way or another, whether it's in a Buddhist context or somewhere else. They haven't been, they haven't had the teaching of, suffering and the noble truths. They haven't heard, the kind of ideas about how things are constantly changing, dukkha and not self, these kinds of things. They haven't been around someone with some level of awakening. And so they're, as I certainly know how this is from my life, really conditioned entirely by the ways of the conventional reality. So they regard form as self. So we think of the body as who we are, the body as self, and self having the body, or the body in self, or the body or self in the body. And I'm using body here instead of form. Form, rupa, is the more general. It's like any kind of form, but of course in this case what we're looking at is the body. How do we relate to our body? And this is also takes some reflection, I think, to understand what's being said here. And I go back to the conditioning of my childhood, where the self was really talked about as soul. I was taught that you have a soul. And of course, we're also really identified with our body. It's what we see and experience as me. And this is how we're brought up from the time we're born, to think in these terms. And so am I the body? Or is this, this soul that's really me, that's going to continue after the body dies? Is this soul kind of has a body? Or is this body in the soul, like the soul is bigger? Or is the soul in the body? I don't know, as a child, it's like, where is it? What is this soul? Where is it? I can't remember who, but some child in my life said, is it like the bottom of my foot, the soul? Where is it? And just kind of like trying to wrap the mind around this idea of what is a self. And now with the teachings of the Dhamma, it's the Buddha is trying to help us not add things on to what we experience, not develop ideas and concepts that we can't verify through direct experience. So the soul is made up. I was also told that animals don't have souls, so it's okay to just kill them. They don't have souls. Human beings have souls. So you don't want to kill a human being. These kinds of ways of thinking are, one way or another, the way human beings get conditioned. Yes, Misty?
Is the soul that you're referring to the chitta?
No, I'm just referring to the concept that I was raised with.
Oh, I see. I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
But there is no soul, right? Is that right?
Well, that's the way I look at it now. And
Oh,
no,
okay.
I mean, the Buddha said there's no like, well, the Buddha was very clear that there's no like abiding personal soul or self. So like when sometimes when people talk about rebirth or reincarnation, they think of it as the soul going from one lifetime to another, some personal self. But that's where the Buddha said this is you can't verify that, no matter how deeply you look, that it's not a personal identity that continues on and on through lifetimes. And
Thank you.
he's made that very clear in a few places. Yeah. So he says they're obsessed with the thought, I am this body is mine. But that body of theirs decays and perishes, which gives rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. So as long as we think of this body as me, as the self, or belonging to me, one way that I find to look at it is I've borrowed this body. It's like renting a car. I do have to give it back to nature. But of course, it's important to take care of it while I have it and use it for good purposes. And we do need it. Um, it's useful, very useful for our development in the Dhamma. They regard feeling as self. So we go through the khandas. As I think I mentioned earlier, this sutta is the very first sutta in one. I don't know, maybe I didn't mention it. The sutta is the very first sutta in the Samyutta of the aggregates. And so it's going to go through now the feeling. We think feeling is self. Self has self as having feeling in myself or myself in feeling. And they're obsessed with this thought, I am feeling, feeling is mine. That was also very strong for me, and I think for most of us. I'm very affected by what I was feeling. And holding it is really important, and other people should know what I'm feeling. That kind of thing. And of course, that causes a great deal of sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. Because the feelings change. They decay, they perish, they come and go. And the same with our perceptions. We take ownership of them, we identify with them. And we might be obsessed with the thought, this is my perception. I am perception. But this perception changes. It gives rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. And as most of you probably know already, I'm not a big fan of calling the sankharas choices. They're formations, like when we use the word sankhara for everything in this conventional reality. It's all conditioned phenomena. And this sankhara that's part of, it is a khanda, an aggregate, is really the concoctions of our own mind. And there's a volitional nature to it. So sometimes you'll see sankhara as one of the aggregates translated as volitional formations or just formations, something that's put together based on other causes. And so all of our mental activity, our dreams, our our fantasies, our thoughts, our ideas, our memories. Memories is generally put into the perception pot, the one we just looked at. So maybe not those here, but all the other mental activities. And when we are obsessed with our identification with these, they bring a lot of sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. And of course, the fifth of the khandhas is sense consciousness. We think of that consciousness as self having consciousness, as consciousness in self, or self in consciousness. We're obsessed with this thought. I am consciousness. Consciousness is mine, but it changes. So sense consciousness changes. The senses change. So the consciousness associated with those senses also changes. We lose our eyesight or our hearing. Whatever those changes are, that can cause a lot of sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. Unless we understand the true nature of this body and the other khandhas that we would take to be self. So now Venerable Sariputta says this is how one is ailing in body and ailing in mind. And then he goes through how is one ailing in body and healthy in mind. So here it's the learned, noble disciple who has seen noble ones and is skilled and trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They've seen true persons and are skilled and trained in the teaching of the true persons, and they don't regard form as self. So they don't regard the body as self, self as having a body, the body in self, or self in the body. They're not obsessed with the thought, I am the body is mine. So when their body decays and perishes, it doesn't give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. Can you imagine that? One of the reflections that I've been using lately is on how healthy is the mind even when the body's not suffering from disease. Because a really, truly healthy mind, referring back to chapter 1 in Bhante Anālayo's book, health of the mind in the Buddha's sense is a completely free mind, freed from greed, hatred, and delusion, freed from attachment to sankharas, freed from seeing sankharas as stable, reliable, real, free from clinging. So, of course, until we're fully awakened, we're going to have some ailment in the mind. But then if we start to practice stepping back from that and observing it instead of being caught up in it, we're already giving ourselves that freedom. So I've heard about people with cancer, that they're dealing with a tremendous amount of distress in the body, who recognize that the cancer is not them and the body is not them, that it's not something that they need to identify with, and that brings freedom to the mind. I don't know if it's full freedom. I don't know if they've realized that they don't have to cling to anything, but they can get that much clarity and separation, so the mind can be less bothered. So this is this is what the Buddha is talking about here, letting go. of our attachment to the body, and then letting go of our attachment to feeling. So they don't regard feeling as self, or self as having feeling, or feeling in self, or self in feeling. They're not obsessed with the thought, I am feeling, feeling is mine. So when that feeling of theirs decays and perishes, it doesn't give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They don't regard perception as self. Self as having perceptions. And this includes, as I said before, memory. A lot of times our memories, we identify with them, we feel bad about them, or, I think actually the memories that help us to feel joy, like memories of giving, memories of being virtuous, that kind of thing, I think is actually good. Not to identify with, but to recognize that those kinds of beautiful actions are adding to the goodness in our own experience and in the world. But still not to take it as personal, as self. So they don't regard perception as self, or self as having perception, or perception in self, or self in perception. They're not obsessed with the thought, I am perception, perception is mine. So when that perception of theirs decays and perishes, it's like you lose your memory. Sometimes people have a lot of learning that they've gained, maybe experts in some field, and then later in life they lose their memory of it all. Does that mean they're losing something that's actually theirs, or is it just something that arises and passes away? Depends, if we can recognize that it's something that just arises and passes away, we don't have to grieve over the loss of memory. And then the same with the sankharas, all of the mental activity. We're not our volitional formations. We're not our thinking process. And we're not obsessed with the choice. And we're not obsessed with the thought, I am this collection of mental processes. This mental activity is mine. So when those choices of theirs, or those sankharas of theirs, decay and perish, it doesn't give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They don't regard consciousness as self. And even regardless of whether we're talking about sense consciousness, or, like Ajahn Sumedho talks about pure consciousness, conscious awareness, we don't want to regard that as self either. It's not personal. Whether we think of this as something that arises and ceases, which is what we're told about sense consciousness, it arises. Eye consciousness arises when the eye is taking in a sight and we're making sense out of it. We're processing it. And then it ceases again. It's not self. And then, to really take that in and reflect on it. Self, they don't think of self as having consciousness, or consciousness in self, or self in consciousness. They're not obsessed with the thought, I'm consciousness, consciousness is mine. If they go unconscious, they're not taking that as something to have sorrow, limitation, pain, sadness, and distress over. So Venerable Sariputta says that's how an individual is ailing in body and healthy in mind. And that's what Venerable Sariputta said, satisfied. Nakula's father approved with what Sariputta said. Now, another interesting piece here is the sutta that Bhante Anālayo translates. That's the parallel to this one, uses a different mechanism that the Buddha often used in many places talking about the khandhas in terms of arising and ceasing, in terms of the gratification, danger, and escape. So this is another model. And I think, it's so beneficial that the Buddha gave us these different formulas, these different models to use, because, maybe the one we just talked about doesn't really land with some potency. Well, and maybe that's how it is now, and then later at some point it will really be, oh wow, I get it. But this other format, this other formula, you might say, of arising and ceasing, the gratification, the danger, and the escape, that might be more accessible to you at this point or at some later point. But it's good to see that that's also something we can apply here. So this arising and ceasing is the acknowledgement that all of the khandhas are really the sankharas in the big sense of everything that arises and ceases is a sankhara. Like when the Buddha talks about all sankharas are impermanent and all dhammas are not self. It's like all sankharas there. It's everything in conditioned reality. Everything that you can know that it comes and goes. It arises and ceases. So all of this, the body, certainly. And right now, actually, it's enough, I think, to just think about the body. So we're talking about disease in the body. Or maybe it's helpful to also think about the mind, because whatever distress we have in the mind, that also arises and ceases. Even like this sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress in the mind, it comes and goes. If as whatever is arising, physical or mental, we can step back to that observer or witness position and watch it. And we can see that it comes and goes. So that's the arising and ceasing. Now, what's the gratification? What's the danger? What's the escape? So the gratification is whatever it is that causes us to identify with it. Maybe it's pleasant, maybe it's painful. We still identify with it. We still call it me or mine. And then the danger, of course, is that it will cease. It comes and goes, it's completely unstable, changing all the time, even before it completely disintegrates, unreliable. And what's the escape? It's always letting go. Letting go of our attachment, letting go of our identification with things, letting go of our sense of ownership. And we don't grieve over what has nothing to do with us. Like the Buddha said to the monks, if you see people out there in the forest picking up wood, picking up the dead wood and taking it away, does that bother you? They're like, no, it's not our wood, Yeah, exactly. This is how we should realize about the body itself. And we don't have to suffer. We don't have to suffer mentally, even though we're suffering physically. And we want to practice regardless of the state of the body now. Because this isn't just something that's going to be available to us. Well, maybe it will be, hopefully, but it's going to be a lot easier if we practice that letting go now, when we're not deep in the throes of disease or whatever state we're in physically. to practice letting go. Practice letting go of small things. It gets easier to let go of the bigger things. That's my theory anyway, my approach. I wanted to read to you the last 2 pages of Bhante Anālayo's words here in the book. He says these 5 aggregates of clinging represent the different components of what one tends to cling to as I or myself, as we've been saying. In addition to the physical body as the location of where I am, feeling pleasant, painful, or neutral sensations is responsible for how I am. So I think it's kind of interesting the way he's characterizing this. The body is where I am. The feelings are how I am. Perceptions as different cognitions, combining the input of sense data with recognition. So that's the, what we're taking in through our senses plus our remembering, so we can make sense of what this is. If we've never seen a bowl before, we wouldn't, maybe understand it as a bowl, but we have our memory of it, or a chair or a horse or whatever. So perceptions as different cognitions combining the input of sense data with recognition based on past experiences and one's accumulated knowledge make up a considerable part of what I am. So I think with everything, we shouldn't just take it and just because we say it or someone says it as true, but then reflect on it. Do you think of that as what I am? My memories, my experiences that I recall, my perceptions? Yeah, maybe. Formations represent volitions and intentions. So this is what Bhante Sujato calls choices. This is the sankharas of the aggregates. They represent volitions and intentions, the way one reacts to what happens now based on one's conditioning from the past, and thereby provide the why I am acting in a certain way. And finally, consciousness represents the act of experiencing and being conscious, which furnishes the whereby I am. So I think this is interesting to think about, maybe reflect on. I think it's interesting to reflect on because it might give us some view into why do I think I am what I am? Why am I forming this into a self and believing in it as such? And of course, we have to operate in the world, so there's a certain amount of this that we need to, it's not like we're doing anything wrong by thinking I am this being. There's a living being here. There's a conventional reality. But where do we let go of solidifying that? Clinging to this sense of I am, which so naturally arises in relation to each of these 5 aggregates, is bound to lead to frustration and conflict as soon as things don't go the way one wants. Undeniably, there is pleasure to be derived from this sense of I am when the body is healthy, feelings are pleasant, perceptions are welcome and interesting, formations result in accomplishing what one wants, and consciousness knows agreeable experiences. This is what the early discourses reckon as the gratification that can be found in relation to each of these 5 aggregates. Yet this gratification comes together with a danger. This danger is based on the simple fact that everything is bound to change. Things arise and sooner or later cease again. They are impermanent. When what is pleasant and agreeable ceases, what arises next will be different, and the chances are that it will be less pleasant and less agreeable. To the extent to which one has been clinging to the five aggregates when they were gratifying, to that extent one will be upset and suffer when they change and become otherwise. To emerge from this predicament calls for an understanding of each of these five aggregates as it really is. This is the basic contrast described in the discourse above between the foolish, unlearned worldling and the learned, noble disciple. Worldlings are unlearned insofar as they have no acquaintance with liberating teachings of the type provided in the present discourse. Lacking such directives, and thereby the means to acquire true wisdom, they remain immersed in ignorance and consequently react foolishly when confronted with the vicissitudes of life. In contrast, disciples who have become learned through receiving instructions, comparable to those given in the present case to Nakula, are able to ennoble themselves by cultivating wisdom and emerging from the foolishness caused by ignorance. In particular, they learn to see clearly that body, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness are impermanent phenomena. Therefore, the gratification they can provide comes inexorably bound to the danger of clinging and attachment, resulting in dukkha once conditions change and become otherwise. The resultant understanding is the fertile soil within which freedom from attachment and the lessening of identification can grow, leading to the ability to remain with a healthy, non-attached mind, even when experiencing strong pain and serious disease. In practical terms, when strong pain arises, instead of succumbing to the natural tendency to own this as mine, giving rise to all sorts of apprehensions about what this pain is doing to me now and going to do to my future, one might just try to be aware of the fluctuating physical sensations of pain. By remaining in present moment awareness of painful sensations without appropriating them as mine and reacting to them mentally, much of the mental affliction caused by physical pain can be avoided. This is how the mind can gradually learn not to suffer along with the body. So this is something we can practice every day. Just intentionally being present with the body as it is. And seeing if we can understand the mind and where it's clinging, what its misunderstanding is that brings us suffering. Do you have questions, comments, dilemmas? Yes, Regina.
So my question is, I have been practicing, or at least trying to practice this with relatively severe headaches.
Mm-hmm.
And when I don't do anything else, like let's say when I have the opportunity to just lie down and feel, let's say, these pulses of pain, it's in quotation marks okay. I can't say that I'm very well trained in this.
Mm-hmm.
But when I, for example, have to be at work, then it's much, much harder to just let the pain be pain and not think, boy, I really resent this headache because I have to get my work done or something like that to make it easy. So what I'm interested in is if I practice this as described, or basically what is your experience, when I practice this, when I get more skilled in it, is then like severe pain? Is that then still something that let's say, takes my full attention. And when I lie down, I quote unquote can deal with it. But when I have to get up and go to work and do my tasks, then it's much, much harder to deal with. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I don't know how it will be. I think that it really varies. Like sometimes we can have pain, and when we put our attention on something else and we're working or we're doing something else, we don't notice the pain, even though it's still there. And sometimes I think we can feel very like the pain is so strong that, it's going to take our attention. But I think regardless of what we're experiencing, even when we're at work, and it depends maybe on the kind of work too. It's like, can we bring our attention to something else, like the breath, or reciting something, a mantra in our mind, some other way of being with the pain. I have, maybe I mentioned before, I haven't had a lot of severe pain in my life. Breaking my collarbone, that was pretty painful. That was before I knew the Dhamma. I've experimented with, getting dental work without anesthesia, and also a minor throat surgery without anesthesia, just to like work with the pain. And there is a point where the mind can go um, into meditation where pain and pleasure have the same effect. It's just sensation. But I couldn't do that well, like filling in a spreadsheet or something. I don't, it's like it really is variable, I think. I think the main thing is, even though we may have to deal with severe feeling in the body, to not attach to it in a way that we're worrying about, what does this mean to my future? What is this, the kind of stuff we add on to it that causes much more pain. You might say the second arrow kinds of things, much more suffering, really like distress. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
We're going to learn as we go through this book about some of the great disciples of the Buddha and how they dealt with severe pain. And interestingly enough, it wasn't by going into deep states of meditation to let go of it, although the Buddha himself did that. He had backaches and headaches. And he said at the end of his life that the only way he could be free of it was to go into deep meditation. But when we encounter that in this book, we see the disciples responding, like, how are you dealing with this? Because after all, they didn't have pain medication like we have available to us. And I don't know if any pain medication helps with your headaches, Regina, but it's like, and what they say is by mindfulness. So mindfulness, what does that do for us when we're experiencing pain? Being present with, like you're saying, Regina. I think maybe trying some different ways of using mindfulness. Like I said, with, a mantra like Bhutto, or with breathing as an attempt. When I would be in the dentist chair, I started practicing with having my attention away from the area where they're drilling. And I'd go to my toes and they would be flexed like that. And I would just gradually relax them. And then I would move up my body, my legs, my belly, and all the way up my body, getting close to the source of the pain. And I would just keep relaxing everything. And then I would go back to the toes and start again, because by that time they'd be like this. And just relax them all the way through. And then later on, when I practiced more, I could go to the source of the pain and be present with it there. But, you know, I think each of us would have to work with the situation we're in and see what it is that we can do to use mindfulness and clear comprehension, remembering that this pain is not mine. This body is not mine. It's not me. I take care of it. Misty, you're muted. Yeah, there you go.
Well, in my situation, with my history of cancer, 2 cancers, and 4 months of pneumonia, and now I'm in like severe pain. And I try to not escape the pain, but look at it and send kindness to it. But it's really difficult, and I'm very tired, not physically tired, but I just don't want to be in this body anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not suicidal or anything, but I'm tired. I want to be rid of this body.
yeah,
The aversion of the body. Yeah. I understand that it's aversion and that's not good, but it's hard.
yeah. But I think the key, though, is your awareness of the aversion. It's not like we can choose really what feelings we have, but we can, accentuate them or calm them down. And this has been going on for you as long as I've known you.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's what, from when did it start? 2019?
2019.
Yeah, 2019. And it's been a long haul. And
Yeah.
I've always been really, what do I want to say? I really have so much regard for, your practice through all of this.
Thank you.
Uh, it's none of us knows what we're going to have to work with.
Right.
And I know the practice you've had for a long time before this came,
Hmm.
I think has really helped you.
Yeah. 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 It's hard,
Yeah.
but I can see the benefits of seeing it as not my body. It's not personal. It's not.
Mhm.
This is just what the body does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like two levels. It's like, yes, the body is ill.
Mm.
This is the Buddha's point, the body is ill and is having a lot of pain. And of course that affects our mind. As
Right.
Dana said, sometimes you just can't, it's not like you can just set it aside. But we can be present and aware of it. We can be aware of what it actually is. It
Yeah.
comes and goes. There are those spaces.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
you sense that those spaces when it's not there.
Mhm.
I know in John Kabat-Zinn's work, helping people put attention on those spaces when the pain is not there has been so
Yeah.
helpful for people's well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, just seeing that this is impermanent.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
like the main benefit of having a human life is if we can use it to awaken to that reality, that everything
Def
here is impermanent. When we really take
Definitely.
that in, it's all arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing. And freedom, relief, that ultimate cessation that the Buddha talks about. Like, I've been reflecting on this text. This is peaceful, this is sublime. The stilling of all sankharas. The letting go of all attachments. The ending of craving.
Thank you.
The fading away, the cessation and nibbana. That cessation is not the same as conditions changing so that the pain ceases. That cessation is the cessation of all attachment, all belief, all clinging, all, misunderstanding. It's the cessation of our belief in the world of conventional reality. Since cessation of our identification with it. So that cessation is available to us regardless of what the conditions are, if they are arising or ceasing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your missing. And James.
So, my conception of the giving up of self-identification is that there is a point where, it just becomes apparent that it's not a thing, and you just give it up, and that's sort of like a big moment, like a kind of moment, realization. But working towards that, there's a lot of work to be done, obviously, with investigation and observation and seeing how things work. And on the path, there's times when the self feels stronger and the self feels weaker, and you can observe these things. But I'm wondering, as we travel this path and as we move gradually towards this goal, what are the consequences of us giving up this story of the self? I kind of feel like, is there not a sort of sense of loss, of disconnect? I mean, if you're giving up these things that you sort of based your life upon, doesn't that end up causing some kind of possibly even distress sometime? Because surely one becomes a little bit problematic in finding direction in life. I mean, obviously it's not an issue if you're a monastic, because your direction is the path. But if you're doing it as a lay follower, one still has to navigate the world. And so if you're giving up these things, doesn't it mean that it leaves a kind of, I mean, can it be problematic sometimes? I mean, I know it can lead to calm, clarity, and peace and things like that, but can it also cause problems?
Actually, I don't think so.
Sorry.
Actually, I don't think so. I think we need to notice if it's causing problems, there's still something we're doing that's not really fully letting go. Because when we let go, we do our work with joy, and we just do it for the sake of work. It's like Ajahn Gana saying, work for the sake of work, give for the sake of giving, don't have any other agenda in it. And so, like what our life becomes when we've let go of everything is just generosity, metta, mudita, karuna, upekkha. And that's what we're living from. So we make choices based on what's going to be beneficial to everyone involved, most beneficial. We make choices based on virtue because we wouldn't want to transgress any precept. So if following this path brings problems, maybe you could call problems, sometimes people leave their partners, that could be a problem, but they'll do it in the kindest way, like do it, take the time, and sometimes we're just not as interested in being with certain people, and so maybe that's a problem for someone. But it's like but things change anyway, and then what what we can see from the perspective of Dhamma is that these changes are not for the worse, they're for the better. Even the example that you set by, not doing the same things with the same people that were not so healthy anyway, to any of us, that kind of thing. So if the path, if our contemplation and our kind of ruminations over the path cause trouble, I think we should look deeper into how we're holding it. Because what is that trouble? Maybe some apathy, or maybe, like, what is it really that my mind is doing? Sometimes we think we're letting go, but we're actually just, there's some aversion underneath or something like that. So looking at that is really important. Insight generally brings happiness and freedom. And when we are practicing to let go of this sense of self and take the Dhamma as our basis. So this is the important thing. It's not just like, oh, everything's gone. My interest is gone. My energy is gone. My connection is gone. It's not that way. It's like we use the Dhamma instead. Our life is full. It's full of happiness. It's full of joy. It's full of kindness and compassion. It's full of being really connected, listening to others without the sense of self wanting to like present something. That's what I think. That's what I've experienced so far.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Joni?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to say, I want to just express my appreciation for Misty and Regina sharing their experiences,
Yeah.
and also everything that you've talked about in regards to living with pain, with physical pain. I've had chronic pain for about 40 years. And I would just like to mention that what I have found is that another second arrow to that is the creeping in of the desire to fix it.
Mhm.
So when I'm meditating, that's easier to see and to be aware of as it comes up. But as I'm trying to go through my daily routines and things that need to be done, that can come in, and I can get entangled with it. So when I become aware of it, there is then there's a release from that and letting go of the grasping of that desire to fix it, to make it better, to get rid of it, a very strongly conditioned,
Yeah.
phenomena for me. And then the only other thing that I'd like to bring in is that another part of it for me that has been very important, along with sort of like everything that you said, was is very much bringing not only kindness, but compassion to myself and to my body. And that's been a real antidote to the aversion
Mhm.
to the body.
Yes. Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I'm glad you brought this up, because we want to know when we're experiencing dukkha. When it's of course, not just the dukkha of the body, the dukkha of the mind. And what you're talking about there, so there are these three types of dukkha that the Buddha identified in the second noble truth. When we come to look at what is the cause, the one you're talking about there is the vibhava tanha, the wanting to get rid of.
Yeah.
And this is, we can really identify, like, what is it that do I want a sensual experience that's different than it is? Well, when we're in pain, we do want a sensual experience that's different than it is, and we also want to get rid of what's happening. And we want to become something else, but at any moment that one or the other is taking precedence and we can observe it. It's through observing it, understanding what it actually is, that we feel relief in the mind. So this is about the mind finding relief, being healthy. And like I said earlier on, how healthy is my mind even when I'm not in physical distress? So this is the practice. What do I want to get rid of? What do I want to get? And why? And of course, we need to, have food and shelter and clothing and medicine. We need to have connections with other people. And there's a lot of things that we would do. But can we do it from a place of just recognizing the good in it and not with attachment? So it's not like we can just will it away. It's not our fault that we have these cravings. It's part of our conditioning. And so I really want to encourage the awareness of it. That's what's so important. And then it's only when we're aware of what we're doing that we can really let it go. Yeah, thank you, Joan. Carolyn?
Thank you, Ayya. I really appreciate other people's questions.
Yeah, me too.
And your answers. And this is so incredibly helpful. Um, so my mom took while I was away picking up the van, she had a fall. And started having increasing amounts of pain associated with it. And we took her to the hospital, and they said that she doesn't have any break. I was afraid, but anyway, the point is she's pretty much now 100% bedbound. She's afraid to get up. She's experiencing hallucinations and having a lot of fear around them. She said she feels like everything is falling away, which I think is really interesting. Sure, of aging, right? And but she's terrified. She's terrified when she's up, and she said, "I just feel like I'm gonna fall, and there's nothing to stop me from falling, even though we're holding her,
Right.
And I think my biggest struggle with it is, like, I can see her suffering and how deep her suffering is, and it's really hard because, like, I'm trying to. I wish I could pass on the Dhamma, that I've learned. I just struggle with that. And, the way that I'm dealing with her situation is by noticing how I want it to be better for her. Like, I want her to be better. I want her to feel better. I want her to be okay. I want her to get better. I want her to be able to get up again. And, in front of me. And I'm working with noticing it and then relaxing into it, you know. And
Yeah.
at times around the hallucinations that she's having, it's like she'll say that the TV that's on the wall is on the floor and the windows are on the floor, like looking down, and she's going to fall. And then there's the proliferation of it. Like she doesn't want to close her eyes and sleep because she's going to open her eyes and it's going to be like that again.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I feel so like so unable to pass on, you know, anything that, you know, any wisdom that I've gained over the years of, you know, being ill and letting go of the trying to make it better and, you know, clinging to how it used to be.
Yeah.
And I see all that in her, and it's like, it's just really hard to witness her suffering. And the only thing that I've been able to say with her is I just sit with her and witness what she's going through. And then, you know, I'll just say things like, I'm here with you, you know, we're here with you. We're holding you right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, as we're picking her up to put her on the bedside commode or whatever.
Yeah.
At one point, when she was going on about, you know, it's going to happen again. I can't close my eyes. And I said, you know, if it happens, can you just relax? Just relax. Just let it happen. You know it's going to happen, so just let it happen. You know, and she knows that, you know, her strength, one strength for that she thinks she has, and I agree, is that she knows it's not real. But she said, but I'm still terrified of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, can you just let it be there? Just let the TV be on the floor. It's okay. It can be on the floor. The windows can be on the floor. You can be on the ceiling, you know. I don't know if any of that is getting through to her, but I would love to hear anything that you have to say about like how to hold it, how to help her hold it, I guess.
Yeah, I think the things that you're saying are good. You know, I don't know if it's possible to encourage her to witness it, you know, like you are kind of, you know, like, yeah, what if you just watch it happen and not worry about it, like you're saying, you know, really encouraging that. I wonder if there's any kind of thought or words that might help her to use, you know, like when this happens, you know, what are the, like maybe someone who's got Buddhist conditioning would want to, you know, repeat the refuges or something, but what would it be for your mom? What could she say, or what could she connect to that would give her a sense of stability and strength or calm? I knew someone who would repeat the whole what was it, the prayer of Saint Francis, you know, like that's a bit much, but you know, just something simple that might really be,
You know,
grounding for her.
that's a great idea. That's a really great idea. I mean, I grew up Catholic. My mom is still Catholic.
Yeah.
And she has been asking for a church
Mm-hmm.
and a priest to come. And, but I think praying, I think that's a really fantastic idea. My caregiver, Natalia, she asked my mom in the middle of one of these hallucinations, she was asking her, what's your favorite music? And my mom said the blues. And so Nati put the blues on her, and it really shifted things for my mom, you know, because this is music that's familiar. It's it's home to her, you know.
Yeah,
I just
things
thought it
like
was
that.
such a brilliant thing to do.
And someone put in the chat that it might be vertigo, not hallucination. And there are exercises for vertigo that she can do in bed. I don't know them. I just know they exist. So
You know, she's had vertigo before and she's done those exercises. Maybe I'll ask her if she remembers them because I don't think that I know them. But.
Yeah, well, maybe you can find out online, or maybe somebody here can send you something. Because it might be everything arises and ceases. She might get better. you know.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. We'll be thinking of you and her. Yeah.
Thank you, Ayya.
Marilyn?
I don't mean to compare the situation to yours, Caird, but I spent a long time with my mother as she was dying, and she wasn't in that much distress, but I found that when she was in distress, I would say, "How are you right now, though? Right now? Oh, yeah, this is good. Like you're here. It's nice here. Okay, so let's just keep focusing on right now and see what happens next, out of curiosity." And the other thing I found was she one time told me how bad it's so awful that we're like this. This is like this. And I said to her, well, I don't think it's so bad. We're warm and dry.
Mm.
And there's a terrible storm going on outside. And you can have anything you want. If you were to ask my brother for an elephant, he would bring one. You know this is true. You can have shrimp anytime you want in this place. You can, there's really nothing wrong with this place right now.
Mhm.
And they looked over and she took her covers and she tucked herself in and she smiled and went to sleep. It was beautiful. But I think there's a lot in the present moment that we can benefit from ourselves too, right? It's kind of the same thing, isn't it? It's, adjust the perception of the situation. Um, and yeah, that's enough for me.
That's great, Marilyn. Thank you. In this moment, all of my needs are met.
They are, and almost always.
Yeah.
The only pain I really have trouble with is that stuff that comes fast. But then it's gone, right?
It
So
goes fast too. Yeah.
it goes fast too. It's like the faster it comes, the faster it goes.
Mhm.
It seems. I mean, so far. Who knows? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. Yeah, so I know that there are some things in the chat, and someone's asking for you to leave your email there if you would, Caird, because then people can send you a link to some of the exercises. And yeah, I think also if you want to make any exchange of information on the KBV community WhatsApp, you're welcome to do that. And if anyone's listening that isn't on the WhatsApp, if you're attending these programs, you're welcome to go to our website and ask to be put on the KBV community WhatsApp group. So, we definitely there's so much support that can come from one another's experiences, and especially as Dhamma practitioners, we can really help each other out. So I'm going to leave this room open a little while, so you can collect whatever's in the chat and make use of that. But I will be going off for lunch. It's during the winter happening earlier. And just to let you know, we started our retreat. It was officially starting on the 4th, and it took a few days to wrap things up. But the last few days of getting into it have been really wonderful for me. And I so much appreciate the support of the community. Brian's doing a great job as steward here with preparing all the food and taking care of things. It's been great. And just thank you all for this chance to go deeper. And I wish that for everyone. May this be a really productive winter. Or if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, summer. Take care, everybody.